Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's episode, we're going to be looking at the 1957 Levelland UFO Encounter. Yet another great UFO article I have for us all to read today, folks, or to read through and basically have fun. Either way, let me go to share screen first and show off artwork from my own upcoming graphic novel, Scumdogs, and then we'll really have some fun, okay? All right, just a moment, folks. Let me do this over here. Let me go over here and do this. Make sure I'm streaming on YouTube as well, folks. Here we are. Just a moment. There. Let me go to share screen now, and then we'll have some fun. All right, here we go. All right, here we go, folks. Here's the Extreme 90s cover from my graphic novel, Scumdogs. I did this cover to harken back to the comics of the early 90s. My book, Scumdogs, is a loving parody of cartoons from the 80s and 90s. When you're reading my book, you'll be reminded of being a kid watching Saturday morning cartoons on the TV. The Scumdogs themselves, well, they're your classic Saturday morning cartoon villains trying to take over the universe. The Scumdogs want to take over the universe because they were banned from pro sports. To be exact, in the far future, thanks to advancements in magic and science, people can transform themselves into gods and monsters, well, using the advanced magic and science in the future, and basically compete in superhuman sporting events known as, one of them was known as the Scumdog Sports. One's sporting events held with superhuman monsters as the athletes. The Scumdogs were booted from these sporting events for being villains and idiots, and now they want to take over the world. It's a simple idea. Getting my characters out there and making fun of cartoons from the 80s and 90s. Either way, folks, the Scumdogs are led by Death Mug. Death Mug is the purple guy with the metal mask over here. Death Mug is a parody of various villains from 80s cartoons and 90s cartoons. Mainly, he's a parody of Skeletor, who was the archenemy of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon. Skeletor having a skull for a face, but if you notice, Death Mug's face, it's a metal mask that resembles the metal mask of Cobra Commander, the leader of Cobra from G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. Yeah. Both villains were over the top and arrogant, and basically, completely thought they should rule everything. They also had screechy voices and basically screamed that basically everyone was against them and stuff like that. But generally, were pretty damn cool characters. Either way, Death Mug is over the top and arrogant like them, but he's also a complete arrogant idiot. But don't worry, he's in good company because his arch enemy, the supposed hero of this book, is just as bad as he is. Buick Starpoon. Buick Starpoon is the guy with the pink pompadour hair with the green-white uniform fighting Death Mug on this cover. Buick Starpoon is an idiot, as I said, but he's basically a parody of Duke, one of the main G.I. Joe characters, crossed over with Buck Rogers and Captain Kirk. He leads the Wild Rangers, who themselves are basically, what you give. You take if you took G.I. Joe and crossed him over with Star Trek Starfleet Command and stuff like that. You get the idea. Your classic military heroes crossed over with your classic sci-fi heroes. That's what Buick Starpoon is. He's an idiot, a moron, and basically he's what you gave lobotomy to Buzz Lightyear, or basically if Buzz Lightyear had a gigantic ego. So think of him as a fair version of Zap Brannigan from Futurama, and you get the idea of who Buick Starpoon is. He's an idiot, but his ego is the size of Mount Everest. Either way, because he leads the Wild Rangers, they all wear the same uniform as Buick Starpoon. That's their universe's Space Force's uniform. Anyone on this cover wearing the same uniform as Buick Starpoon, they're part of the Wild Rangers. By the way, because of their G.I. Joe parodies, each of them, including Buick Starpoon himself, have military specialties. That's their special skills and abilities. Buick Starpoon's special skill these days is that he's a starship captain. Let's look at the rest of the Wild Rangers now. Down here, this guy with the mohawk and the navy blue and white uniform, his name is Roadhog. His military specialty is that he's a soldier. Then we have this bald guy with the gun down here in the blue and white uniform. His military specialty is that he's a Marine. Then we have the guy back here in the red uniform. Now, his name is Blast Tank, and his military specialty is that he's a tanker. Otherwise, he drives around weaponized vehicles like this or tanks. You get the idea. Blast Tank, tanker. Either way, folks, this cover, you see them all on, it's one of 3 different variant covers. That means you'll have a choice of 3 covers for your book when I finally release Scumdogs and stuff like that. Then we have Girl Friday, the female member of the Wild Rangers, the second in command and the lieutenant to the Buick Starpoon. This is Buick, as I said, she's Buick Starpoon's lieutenant, and the thing is, Girl Friday, even though she works under Buick Starpoon, hates his guts and the rest of the Wild Rangers. She hates them because she was assigned to the Wild Rangers team to basically babysit them and make sure they do their jobs. Otherwise, Girl Friday is the designated straight man of the book, and she's the only competent person in the entire book who knows everyone else around her is an idiot. Then we have Deathmug's henchmen, Murdermouth and Sloppy. Murdermouth is the blue guy with the top hat up here, and Sloppy is the pink guy down here with shape-shifting powers. These guys are Deathmug's henchmen, because in all 80s cartoons, the main villain would have henchmen who would do his bidding, and they'd always be idiots. Then we have Death Metal Doctor and Miss Breasty Melons. These two characters are parodies of characters from G.I. Joe who were part of their enemy's Cobra, namely Dr. Mindbender and the Baroness. Dr. Mindbender was a mad scientist who worked for Cobra. He dressed like he was a hair mill musician. Yeah, he dressed like he was a hair metal musician. It inspired me to create Death Metal Doctor because I thought, what would be cooler than a hair metal musician who was a mad scientist? He was hired after the Scumdogs became villains. It's why he's not a monster himself. They hired him to invent weapons and machines to take over the universe. He does it while rocking out. And Miss Breasty Melons, as I said, she's a parody of the Baroness. The Baroness was Cobra's top spy and infiltration agent. She was an incredibly rich woman who became a terrorist and wanted to help Cobra take over the world. In contrast, Miss Breasty Melons is just your typical dumb blonde idiot who happens to be very rich. She was bored with her life. She had no fun. When the Scumdogs became villains, she decided to back and fund all of their evil schemes just for the lols. The only thing she has in common with the Baroness really is that both women are incredibly beautiful and wear skin-tight outfits. Otherwise, Miss Breasty Melons is just your typical dumb blonde idiot. Go back to Scumdogs when it's finally finished, and please share this video out. Now let's go over here, folks, and look at some Indiegogos. Now, let's look at this. Let's look at KS Twins, one by Sam Topoli and Paranoid American. Looks like a good-looking book. I've shown it to you before, folks. So let's get into it. It's made $20,052. Now you can Chaos Twins issue 1. The Chaos Twins. In this all-new creator-owned comic series from Sam Topoli and Paranoid American, two sisters uncover a secret conspiracy happening within their town, making friends with cryptids and ghosts along the way, battling shape-shifting reptilians, gigantic mech monsters, and weaponized nostalgia. Sounds good. Sounds very good. The artwork in this book looks pretty good as well. Yeah. Look at that. The twins can shapeshift and have friends with fun adventures with cryptids, and they look pretty damn awesome. Either way, Chaos Twins 1 digital is $5, but the printed copy is $15 to back this book. Like I said, folks, it looks pretty good. Let's take a look at this trailer now. Hello. That was good. That was Chaos Twins 1 by Sam Topoli and Paranoid America. You can back get the print version of this book for $15. Let's go over here now and look at this book. All right. We have Sunjackers Volume 3 print 1. It's made $2,000 with 28 days left. Let's take a look at this book, folks. All right. Hey, I'm Christopher Hose. You may remember me from such horse web comics as Spitfire's Midlife Crisis and Help Me Cards Against Humanity Ruined My Life. Today I'm here to pitch you on printing Sunjackers Volume 3. After the success of Volume 1 and 2, I'm taking the print of Volume 3 seriously, all going to plan. You can practically treat this like a pre-order page. You can just go ahead and order your copy of the comic right here, over there. I've also included options that haven't been available before. When I'm done drives like these, such as the options to get volumes 1 and 2 with it, the option for a second page with the option to sponsor the project on top of getting your copy. Sunjacker is the story of a scrappy group of street rats getting by in this noisy, soggy, and frequently cold metropolis of Center Lot. In the wake of the disappearance of the sun, Adam Smasher steals and deals Hell Dry, the medication required to keep Smasher steals and deals Heliodril, the medication required to keep Suntech implants functioning and non-toxic, while her estranged brother, Rainbow Code, grapples with his role as an enforcer of the system as a sky guard. This is a cyberpunk story, and a handful of mega corporations rule the world, and your body is as cheap as your labor. But it's also two other things. It's a pony story where the legacy of the vision of harmony and its failure hangs over everything, like the remains of a broken relationship. And it's anti-retrofuturistic. This isn't a reheated 1980s dystopia of neon or Orientalism. This is the world of Silicon Valley is building. We're not going to allow that to happen here. This is the world of Silicon Valley. Don't worry, we're going to stop that, folks. Either way, it looks pretty good. The artwork, well, what I can see of it looks pretty good, folks. You can back one comic, please, for $22. Not bad. I'll take your entire set for $55. Get all of it together. Volumes 1, 2, and 3 together. Looks pretty good. That's Sunjacker's Volume 3 print run. Not bad. Okay, looks like a good-looking book. I mean, it's a funny little story there. But otherwise, it looks pretty good. Either way, you can also back Tomorrow Girl for, well, this is Ben Dunn's new book. It's Tomorrow Girl. This is Quagmire High's own superhero girl who basically moves over to the Sky City and basically saves the day. You back this book for $30 for a softcover version. That looks pretty good as well, folks. Let's take a quick look at this book as well. Just a quick look anyway. As I said, at long last, the Maid of Might returns with an all-new adventures. From the pages of Ninja High School comes Quagmire High School's resident superhero, Tomorrow Girl. She's leaving the small town and going to the big city where she will train to be Sky City's new defender. But will she be enough to protect the citizens? Protect the citizens from all manner of threats. Find out in this brand new 120-page comic with adventures that take you back to the classic age of superheroes. Created by Ben Dunn, it was meant to be a throwback to the gold and silver age of comics, but with a modern spin. It is all ages fun, but with a little cheekiness and non-stop action. It's 120 big pages, folks, so basically it's a full mini-series. Yeah, it looks pretty good to me, folks. That's been done soft cover, $30. Yeah, all the different soft cover versions of this book with all the variant covers are $30, folks. So go back Tomorrow Girl up on Indiegogo. Let's take a look at the trailer as well. That's Tomorrow Girl, Truth, Justice, and In Your Face. You can back at the book for $30, folks. So go do so. Either way, time to get into my article today, folks. Today, we're looking at stalled vehicles and land spacecrafts. The 1957 Levelland UFO Encounter. Without a doubt, one of the most intriguing and detailed UFO encounters unfolded in the fall of 1957 in Levelland, Texas, when multiple witnesses reported the presence of a UFO over the 10,000 population town to police, with many of them reporting direct interference with their cars. What's more, several of the witnesses even reported the bizarre objects the bizarre objects had landed in the middle of the road, making the events of the evening far from just a from lights in the sky sighting. Yeah, far from that, folks. The Levelland UFO incident is perhaps one of the most important of its era, not least as it was documented by the local police. It happened with several officers even viewing the objects for themselves, corroborating the sightings reported by the multiple residents of the region, and offering the case of suggestion of credibility, as well as the police files on of the encounter. The incident was also investigated as part of a Project Blue Book, perhaps aiding in its preservation down the decades. Okay. Either way, So this UFO incident, as the article says, as well as the police files on the encounter, the incident was also investigated as part of Project Blue Book. Perhaps aiding in its preservation down the decades. So this UFO incident was basically investigated by Project Blue Book itself, basically evaluating and basically learning all the details. So I can imagine why this particular UFO incident is still talked about even today. Either way, getting back to where I left off, meaning it can still be studied today by UFO researchers and enthusiasts almost 3/4 of a century after it took place. And while there are still many unanswered questions about the case, that something truly strange took place that night in the small Texan town is surely not in question. Now we come to the start of the story, folks. The first of many calls to the police switchboard. It was around 11 p.m. on the evening of November 2nd, 1957, when police officer A.J. Fowler was on desk duty at Levelland Police Station, and he received the first of several shocking reports from the public. The first call from Pedro Cedio, who, along with his friend Joe Salaz, who had been driving their pickup truck around 4 miles west of the town when they noticed a brightly glowing cigar-shaped object overhead, and what's more, this strange craft was seemingly headed in their direction. Succedio, who was seemingly clearly spooked by what had just transpired, would relay to Fowler that the object had continued its approach, and that it had came nearer. As it got nearer, or should I say, and that as it got nearer, the truck's engine had faltered and eventually cut out, forcing their vehicle to a stop. At the same time, the headlights also went dead. Intrigued, he stepped out of the vehicle in order to get a better look at this apparent otherworldly vehicle. Succedio would later write an official statement of the incident, in which he would state that the object's movement was very rapid and that he could feel significant heat coming from it. Furthermore, he noticed that the object was torpedo-shaped and appeared to be a combination of yellow and white. He estimated that it was around 200 feet long and moved somewhere in the region of 600 to 800 miles per hour. The object passed directly over the top of them at a relatively low altitude as it moved into the distance. The headlights suddenly came to life. When Succedio climbed back into the driver's seat, he found that the engine started on the first try with no problems. From there, Succedio and Salaz drove to the town of Whiteface, where they found a phone booth and immediately made the report to Fowler. Although he listened to Succedio's report in full, privately Fowler dismissed the report, feeling certain that the men had been drinking or it was some kind of bizarre hoax, call or both. However, less than an hour later, another call would come into the switchboard with the caller offering remarkably similar details. So basically, maybe we'll get more of a look at this UFO, folks. He said it was white and yellow. Was that painted on, or was it glowing white and yellow? there have been numerous sightings of various UFOs, folks. And basically, sometimes it can be just lights in the sky, and sometimes it can basically be nuts and bolts craft. I'm wondering here, folks. I'm wondering, was this actually a real nuts and bolts UFO? But this thing was glowing like it was white and yellow and stuff like that. Or was it painted that way? Did he actually get a good look at it and stuff like that? Or was he too beside himself and upset by what he was seeing? He was too excited to basically get a good look at it. All he says that was that it was white and yellow. I'm just wondering, was it glowing? Was it glowing and stuff like that, like a big light bulb, and was just flashing white and yellow? Or was it basically like a painted object? Like you could see the parts of it were painted yellow and other parts were painted white. I'm just wondering, because I'm wondering if you actually saw this really, got a good look at it, or it was just far away. Because he does say it was torpedo shaped, so that means that at least this basically corroborates other stories, folks, because this sounds like yet another story of a cigar shaped UFO. Torpedo, yeah, being torpedo shaped and all that. So yeah, these men saw a torpedo-shaped UFO, another in the long line of cigar-shaped UFOs that have been seen. I'm just wondering, was it glowing like the sun, or was it just painted yellow and white? Either way, it was moving. It was 200 feet long, so a big sucker, and moved somewhere in the region of 600 to 800 miles per hour. It was also moving relatively fast, and it also basically cut out all electrical instruments, including Mr. Cedio's truck and stuff like that. So very interesting. That's something else basically see. Either way, the guy the police officer who took the call thought they were basically either drunk or basically trying to do a hoax. But later on, and we're going to read next, folks, other calls came in with similar details. So now let's get into this next part and see if there's any more details on this UFO, or if it was just a different one. Reports of a landed craft in the middle of the road. At around... I just thought, folks, this object, if it was the same object and it landed in the road, it was 200 feet long. That must have been, that's basically like driving up to a building, for God's sakes. Can you imagine basically driving up to a UFO that big, landed in the middle of the road? I mean, it would basically go over the road, wouldn't it? Either way, this object, basically there were reports that came in of some sort of object landed in the middle of the road. So let's get into it now. At around 11:45 p.m., Fowler took another call at the desk from a person who was only identified as Mr. W., who claimed he had been driving around 4 miles east of Levelland in the town of Witherharrel. Yeah, let's call it Witherharrel. Okay, folks? Yeah, either way, the town of Witherharrel was where the sighting took place. Pardon me, folks. Which is incidentally in the direction that Sakidio claimed that the object had disappeared to following his sighting. According to Mr. W., not only did he see a brilliantly lit egg-shaped object while driving, but the object sat right in the middle of the road. Further, similar to Saxidio's description, Mr. W. would offer that the object was at least 200 feet in length, and as he approached it, his car engine and headlights failed. Yeah. All right. So it was about 200 feet in length. Yeah, an egg-shaped object. So he said to him it was egg-shaped. But I imagine that might be because he was basically looking at this object head on. It was still more or less shaped like a torpedo, more like oblong, stuff like that. Sounds like the same object was seen by this man, Mr. W, as Saxidio and his friend did in their truck. Either way, it was 200 feet long and landed in the middle of the road. Or should I say it was probably all over the road. It was bigger than the road. So yeah, I can imagine that must have been terrifying, especially because you could see that it must be a piloted object. It isn't a meteor, and it basically was just sitting in the middle of the road. How did it get there? This guy must have been thinking, where did this thing come from? Was it built here? Was this always here? I mean, I've been through this area before. I never saw this thing, and it's right in the middle of the road. I'll have to drive around it. That's probably what Mr. W was thinking when he saw this egg-shaped, or should I say, cigar-shaped object, this UFO. Either way, following the car coming to a stop, Mr. W exited the vehicle and cautiously edged toward the landed craft. He stated that the glow from it lit the surrounding area and appeared like a large neon light. After he had taken only several steps toward it, The object rose into the air to an approximate altitude of around 200 feet before disappearing into the distance, just like Suicidio. The moment it disappeared, the headlights came back on and the car's engine started with no problems. After it had disappeared, Mr. W sped to the nearest phone booth in order to report the sighting. At this point, Fowler was now beginning to suspect that perhaps something strange was traveling the skies of the town, and 15 minutes later, he had even further reason to think so. Very interesting. Either way, can you imagine? Let me reread this part again, folks. After he had gotten out of his car and basically, he stated that the glow from it lit the surrounding area and it appeared like a large neon light. After he had taken only a few steps toward it, the object rose into the air to an approximate altitude of 200 feet before disappearing into the distance, just like Suicidio. The moment it disappeared, the headlights came back on. The car's engine started with no problems. Can you imagine this giant object, 200 feet long, at least basically the size of a building to you, just rising into the air and then zipping off? Can you imagine how horrifying that would be, folks? How absolutely beside himself Mr. W here was. And Fowler here, basically taking in report after report of these strange incidents with these UFOs. And about to get another one as well. So let's read the next story now. Before I do, though, let me go over here. We have 3 watching. Not bad. Let me go over here and see. Refresh this page. Yeah, we have 4 watching. Not too bad. Let's get back to the article now. Another car brought to a stop. Another car brought to a stop, folks. It was around midnight when Fowler received the 3rd phone call of the night, reporting something strange traveling overhead. Although the man didn't give his name, he claimed he was driving on a quiet road just over 10 miles to the north of Levelland when he saw a strange aerial object simply sitting in the middle of the road. The closer he got to the curious craft, his engine began to sputter before finally cutting out. At the same time, his headlights also failed. The man remained in his car, watching the object for any signs of activity. Then it calmly rose into the air and disappeared into the distance. Just like the previous, either way. Let me reread that part again, folks. Although the man didn't give his name, he claimed he was driving on a quiet road just about over 10 miles to the north of Levelland when he saw a strange aerial object simply sitting in the middle of the road. So there's another report of this object just sitting there. Why? Why would it even need to be on the road? It was basically just advertising, look at me, and you can't get around me without driving around me. Either way, the closer that this witness got, the closer he got to the curious craft, his engine began to sputter, as in the other stories, before finally cutting out. At the same time, his headlights also failed. Either way, like in the last story, it calmly rose into the air and disappeared into the distance. Was it going the same direction as what the Suicidio and Mr. W saw? What I'm trying to say, did this object rise into the air and then fly off in the same direction as with the same cases with Mr. Suicidio and Mr. W? Did it fly off and then basically go in the same direction, or was it traveling in a different direction this time? Either way, this witness just basically, just like the previous ones, after disappearing, the car's headlights came back on and its engine was able to be restarted. Just like the previous witness. And just like the previous witnesses, so convinced was the man that he had witnessed something very strange and very real, he immediately made his way to the nearest payphone in order to make a report of the encounter. He did. Although Fowler wasn't aware of it until the following day, another incident was unfolding with what would appear to be the same craft only minutes later. A blue-green craft made from aluminum-like material. Less than 10 minutes later, another encounter unfolded in the same location as the previous caller. The witness this time was a 19-year-old college freshman from Texas Tech University. He claimed he had been driving along the road when his car engine suddenly cut out and his car headlights died. The car rolled to a stop and the student got out and pulled up the hood in an attempt to see what the problem was. He was, however, unable to see anything that might have caused the problem and pulled the hood back down. It was as he was making his way back to the car that he noticed an oval-shaped object that had a flat underside in the middle of the road ahead of him. Are you sure we can believe this guy's story, folks? The other witnesses say that this thing was 200 feet long. The size, this thing, basically, if it was standing on its side and literally was, cigar-shaped, it would basically be the size of a skyscraper. How did this kid, this 19-year-old witness not notice this gigantic thing in the middle of the road? Or should I say, this thing is so big, it sounds, it wouldn't just be in the middle of the road, it would cover the entire road and perhaps a lot of the ground beyond the road, for God's sakes. I can believe that this guy actually saw it. It just seems iffy that he didn't see it before his car stopped. Maybe he was. Remember, we're talking about a teenager here, so maybe as he was driving, he wasn't paying attention, and before he saw the object, his car died. So it makes sense. Remember, the other witnesses say that this thing was putting off light and was making everything around it look like a neon, look like a neon sign. So how did this guy not notice this glowing object? Was it just not glowing? We'll learn about that as we read the rest of his report, though. But either way, it just sounds a little iffy that this kid didn't notice this thing. I'm not saying he's lying. It just sounds iffy. Either way, getting back to the article, he further claimed that the object emitted a blue-green glow. Okay, so unlike the last ones, this one, instead of yellow and white, this one was basic. This time the object was glowing a blue-green glow, and that it was approximately 125 feet long, at least from his perspective. He also offered that he could see no markings or writing of any kind on the exterior of the craft, and that the exterior itself appeared to be like an aluminum-like material. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, folks. This guy, maybe he's right. Maybe it's only 125 feet long they saw. 200 feet to 125 feet long. I can understand why these people could basically mistake with the size of this object, because it was gigantic and huge. But at 125 feet to 200 feet, yeah, I can imagine why people would make mistakes, because they probably weren't approaching this thing with a tape measure to basically measure this thing. They had to estimate how big it was. Either way, 125 feet, and was glowing a blue-green glow. But this time, folks, this guy clearly saw that it was made of a metal aluminum-like material. So he could clearly see that it was basically made of shiny metal. So that's a very good report. That's a very good detail in this report. So this object was clearly, literally a nuts and bolts craft, at least as far as we can understand, folks. It was glowing for some odd reason. So how metal can glow, we do not understand, really. I mean, unless this thing was basically, if it was basically red hot, wouldn't it glow red or something like that? No, it was glowing blue-green. So it wasn't basically glowing because it was hot and stuff like that. Like the way metal begins to glow when you basically start to melt it down. No, this thing was glowing a blue-green, and it looked like it was made of an aluminum-like material. So very interesting. Why do these objects glow like this? Was it some sort of energy field around it? But that is something to speculate on. But the fact that this kid here basically did say that it looked like it was made of an aluminum-like material, basically just so that he was looking pretty closely at this object. So that's pretty good detail here. He clearly says that it was made of metal. That's a good detail to take in, folks. Either way, getting back to his story, folks. Getting back to his story, realizing he was viewing something completely out of the ordinary, the young man quickly got back inside the car and began attempting to start the engine, which failed to turn over. He gave up his attempts and sat as quietly as he could, watching the strange object. After several minutes, it rose almost straight up into the air and vanished in a split instant. Yeah. Okay, so it flew. It basically rose into the air and then vanished in a split instant. Like the other witnesses, the car's headlights and engine worked as normal the instant the craft disappeared. The student later stated that he told no one of the sighting for fear of public ridicule. However, when he learned of the many other sightings the following day, he finally made a report to the sheriff's office. The evening's events, however, were not over yet. Okay, folks. So unlike the other stories, this guy saw this object on the ground for several minutes. He just watched it for several minutes. The other stories I almost mentioned say that maybe it was only a few minutes. Or basically almost instantly, this object rose into the air and then flew off. Now, it almost seems like this object wants people to see it. It's stopping and doing the same thing over and over again. It wants people to report that this object has been seen. And it lands in this object lands in the most obvious place possible that it would be seen, the middle of the road. I'd say that's obvious because, literally, no one could get around this object without driving right up and around it to get by, right? So, yeah, it sounds like this object, this UFO, this UFO that was either 125 feet to 200 feet long, sat in the middle of the road and we just waited for people to see it. And then it took off. Either way, this story was good because this kid did say it looked like it was made of aluminum metal. So we know that this object was at least material and physical, at least as far as we can tell. Either way, The next part of the article is something odd is going on. Before we read that, folks, let me go over here. We have one watching. All right. Sorry, folks. Maybe I should basically do a little better. That sounded a bit annoying to me, didn't it? Either way, let's get back to the article and read this part of the article saying something odd is going on. That's a little of an understatement, isn't it? Around a quarter past midnight, Fowler took another call at the desk. The man who didn't give his name, he said he was calling from a phone booth around 9 miles north of Levelland, around a mile south of Texas. Tech students, citing only minutes earlier. Like the previous witness, he reported that he was driving along the road when he noticed a strange glowing object simply sitting in the middle of the road ahead of him. Just like the previous witness, he claimed that as his car got closer to the object, he began to experience engine trouble, with the headlights and the engine eventually cutting out completely. All right. He remained in his car watching the bizarre display in front of him. All right. Let me read that. Yeah, I'm trying to basically, I think I read it a little too fast. Around a mile south of Texas Tech, the student sighting only minutes earlier. Like the previous witness, he reported that he was driving along the road when he noticed a strange glowing object simply sitting in the middle of the road ahead of him. All right. Okay, so it was doing the same thing like the other students. Or yeah, this object was doing this UFO was doing the exact same thing once again, sitting in the middle of the road. Once again, I have to ask ourselves, is this all it's going to do? Just basically fly around and just sit in the middle of the road and let people see it? Either way, the witness this time, who as the article said, didn't give his name, as well, it seems to be usual, this report at least, folks, says they basically remained in his car watching the bizarre display in front of him. Then, just like the previous reports, he offered that the craft suddenly rose straight up into the air. It came to a brief stop around 300 feet from the ground, at which point the light on or inside it went out and the craft simply vanished. Once more, as soon as it did so, the car headlights came back on and the witness was able to start the car's engine. Okay, folks, before I continue, but this time, this object did something different. It rose straight up into the air, and the light that was giving off just went out and this object simply vanished. Did it basically engage its faster than light drive, or did it basically just phase out of our reality? I'm trying to say, folks, it sounds like this object basically just literally disappeared and basically maybe reappeared in somewhere else. Like it basically teleported. Is that what this witness saw? Either way, like the other reports, his engine came back on the moment this object was gone. I'm just making another thing here, folks. At least this story basically is different for the fact that this object, while it did rise in the air, it just didn't zip off like Speedy Gonzalez, like it had super speed. No, this time the object rose into the air and then just simply disappeared, like it teleported. So that's a good bit of information here. So it wasn't flying. It might have just basically engaged its faster than light drive and just basically got out and literally got off of Earth and basically went somewhere else. If any further reports say that they see the same object, well, that maybe we'll have to consider maybe this object was basically maybe it just teleported to a different road or something, or maybe to somewhere else. Maybe it would be better if someone saw. Maybe this object thought, whoever was controlling this object, that maybe instead basically just zipping off at super speed, maybe it thought that maybe it should just engage its teleportation or maybe camouflage and just disappear. It could be, folks, because most of these reports are basically somewhat samey, and this object seemingly seemed to be doing the same thing. Now, what was on here, folks, is that because this object was basically just landing and then taking off and allowing itself to be seen, I almost expected some of these people to be in the same area as the other people, because this object was doing nothing but doing the same thing over and over again. Now, there were differences in the reports. That one guy said that the object looked like it was made of aluminum metal in the last report. Well, this one says that the craft literally rose into the air and just disappeared. Yeah, and just literally disappeared. So that's something else to consider and wonder about. Either way, moving on from where I left off on the article once more, folks. At this point, Fowler realized that not only was something strange being seen by multiple residents around the town, but that the craft was something truly out of the ordinary. He radioed out to units already on patrol and around the town, informing them that something odd was going on and asking them to actively search for this strange and mysterious aerial vehicle. Incidentally, 2 of the officers did report seeing strange lights in the distance, but none of the units got as close as the previous witness. Interesting. Okay, so at least the police officers basically do, two police officers, at least two of the officers do corroborate that there was something strange going on that night. So at least the other witnesses basically could feel better that even police officers were seeing these things. Yeah, I mean that's a good thing, folks, because even the police are basically saying, yeah, something was out there that night. Then more people could come forward with their testimonies and basically give more what they saw as well. Yeah, other people could come forward with their testimonies, adding their stories to the mix already, so we get a better idea of exactly what this thing was. With more people basically talking about it and basically coming forward, that's a good thing. From what I can see, folks, this object, whatever it was just doing the same thing over and over again. As I said, folks, why? It makes no sense. Why would aliens come here and basically land in the middle of the road, then take off as soon as someone sees them? It's almost as if they're literally just there to basically just show themselves off. Why? Were they proud of their UFO or something? I mean, were they so proud of their oblong, cigar-shaped their cigar-shaped UFO that they wanted to show it off to mere humans? Because I see no rational explanation why aliens would do that. Either way, let's read some more now. Although around half an hour later, though, yet another encounter unfolded. An object landing softly in the road. Okay, so this time we can see the object landing in the road. Okay. At around 45 minutes past midnight, a local man was driving to the west of Levelland, roughly in the same location as the first report of the evening. The unnamed man claimed to have seen an an orange glowing object approximately a mile away from his location. Yeah, all right. Either way, it was about a mile. About this oblong object. It was glowing orange this time. So instead of yellow or blue and green, instead of white and yellow, it was glowing orange this time. Okay, so why? This object seems to basically, the most differences in most of these articles is that this object seems to basically glow different colors at different times. That's another thing. Were they all the same object, or were these different UFOs that we're seeing? The thing is, folks, this makes me think that this was one object, because they were all seen flying in the same direction, and the only real difference between these reports is that most of these people said it was glowing different colors at different times. So I think this was the same object at least, but then again, maybe the fact is that these were different objects that were seen. It would explain at least some of it, folks. But why? Why would they change color? At least basically, why would there be that one difference while the UFO itself is more or less physically the same? An oblong or cigar-shaped object landing in the middle of the road, but it could glow different colors for some insane reason or even disappear. Okay, clearly we don't know enough about the subject to make any real guesses about it, but I can only say that this object makes no real rational sense, but it's still very intriguing because this does corroborate other stories, folks. Other people have seen UFO reports of alien objects, and these objects will glow any manner of colors. But this object here is instead of basically staying one definite color or basically turning a different color and then disappearing. No, it's basically been seen different colors, white and yellow, orange, and even blue and green before disappearing. So this object, whatever it was, if it was the same object, well, for whatever reason, just felt the need to basically put on a neon show for people. But I have to ask once again, why? Why is this object behaving in such a bizarre and utterly baffling manner? Why would it need to change colors like this? Why sit in the middle of the road? And why basically put on this show? Why? I have no idea why, but still very intriguing because we can basically speculate on because maybe these people were meant to see it. Either way, this new witness, saw this orange glowing object approximately a mile away from his location. The man continued to watch as the object came closer and closer, eventually landing softly in the middle of the road, approximately a quarter of a mile from him. It was shortly after it touched down on the road that the engine of his truck began to cut out, eventually dying completely with his headlights. The truck came to a stop, and the witness remained in the driver's seat watching the scene ahead of him. Okay, and like the other stories, folks, this guy actually saw this object land. It was about a mile away from him, but he could clearly see that it was basically a very large object sitting in the middle of the road, which is still a very strange thing for it to do, and was glowing orange this time. Either way, it sounds like this guy was about a mile away from it. So in this story as well, folks, there's a difference. This because he was instead of basically being maybe no more than 100, maybe a few hundred feet away from it, it was about a mile away from it. But you could clearly see it was glowing orange. And yet his car, for whatever reason, even though it was a mile away, his car engine just stalled and died. So why? Wouldn't this, if this UFO was there to basically put on a show, wouldn't it basically waited for him to drive up to it, or did it basically stall his car for a reason? I'm going to say, folks, maybe this object, this orange glowing object, stalled his car because they wanted him to stop there and to see it, and they didn't want him to basically get frightened and drive away. So obviously, it sounds like they literally were putting on some sort of show for this one witnesses, doesn't it? And they didn't want him getting away. Yeah. That's very odd. I mean, I'm trying to basically speculate on why, folks. The only real idea I have here, folks, is that these alien beings or whoever is controlling these vehicles or UFOs basically want people to see them. Maybe it was the government. Maybe this UFO was controlled by the government, and they wanted to basically these random witnesses were meant to basically see this because they knew that eventually that even if they basically showed this to maybe half a dozen people, a few of them would come forward with their reports. And those that did, and even the police ones, that would basically make, well, or should say, would basically compel the other witnesses to come forward with their stories. Now, I imagine maybe that during that one night back in 1958, maybe dozens or maybe even tens of maybe dozens and dozens or tens and tens of people saw this object, but only a few of them came forward with their stories, including the police and even the witnesses who got right close to the object and could see that it was made of some sort of metal. I imagine only a few of these people actually saw it. If this object was if this object was controlled by the government and they wanted people to see it, maybe they wanted people to basically think that it was some sort of alien vehicle. Maybe they stalled their cars because they didn't want these people driving away in fear. They wanted them to see them. They wanted them to watch this object rise into the air and then take off because they wanted these people to come forward. Because that's the only rational explanation I can think of. It would also make sense that this wasn't alien beings, folks, because you can say a lot of things about aliens, but a lot of the people who basically talk about UFO reports mention how insane all these reports are. It seems like these reports basically make no sense at all. But they do make sense if these UFO incidents were controlled by the U.S. government, that these people were meant to see these objects and basically come forward and tell their stories. Maybe they were somehow drugged and this was all hallucination, or maybe these people were meant to see this object and then come forward, as I said, and basically, well, tell their story. Why? Because maybe the government wants people to come forward and say that aliens exist. Maybe they, as I've said before, folks, maybe the government wants to use aliens as some sort of political tool. And the best way to do that is by basically using advanced aerial aircraft and basically make it look like actual alien beings. Maybe it makes sense there, folks. That actually basically falls into place. That makes some level of sense. But still, folks, it makes no sense because why would the government basically use its top secret aircraft and allow people to see it? I think even the USSR, if they were doing something similar, would not like the idea of people knowing about their advanced technology like this. Because if it was controlled by the U.S. government, we are still basically putting your top secret technology out for random people to see. So that makes no damn sense. What if the USSR or any other enemies of your nation basically develop some weapon that can take out your highly advanced vehicle? Or maybe the government was hoping people would just think it was aliens and that this wasn't controlled by the government and there was no way to basically counter or basically create a technology to stop these vehicles. Maybe that's what the government was thinking on, because otherwise, it still is the fact. But the fact of the matter, folks, is that these UFO stories make no rational sense. The way these UFOs behave isn't the way that actual alien beings would behave with their technology. They're not doing anything scientific. They're not doing anything really rational or basically easy to basically surmise. No, they're just showing up and just showing themselves off and then fleeing or basically running off, almost as if they're a bunch of random kids basically playing a game of hide and seek. It's an idea. Either way, interestingly, as we get back to the article, folks, he stated that while the object had clearly glowed a bright orange color while it was in motion, now that it was on the ground, it had a blue-green look to it. Okay, so finally we get a corroboration to their stories, folks. So this object was basically glowing orange, but then it turned to a blue-green when it was on the ground, like in the other article, like in the previous story, folks. So that is another good thing. This is another tidbit that basically tells us that this was the same object that was seen before. Either way, as it was on the ground, it had turned a blue-green look. It had a blue-green look to it now. Not only is this similar to the Texas Tech student not only is this similar to how the Texas Tech student described it, but the notion of an object's color having a connection to its movement and speed thereof is one that surfaces often in other UFO reports. Yeah, I mentioned it. I have heard about that, folks. Yeah, how sometimes a UFO will glow orange and then it'll turn a different color and then it'll disappear. This is basically how people have described these UFOs behaving and stuff. And it's good that this guy basically said that it basically turned from orange to blue and green, because that corroborates their story. That does point that this object is the same object that was witnessed by the Texas Tech student and other people as well as Succedio and Mr. W. Either way, after several moments, the object rose calmly but quickly into the air and then disappeared into the distance. Like the other sightings, the truck headlights immediately came back on the movement of they came back on the moment the craft had vanished, and the engine started with no problems whatsoever. Although the witness didn't report the incident straight away, they did speak to Fowler the following day and made a full report then. Around half an hour after this incident had taken place, though, Fowler did receive another call from a concerned citizen. Okay, before we read next, folks, we have 2 watching. Not too bad. Not too bad. Let's see. Right. Not bad. Yeah. Let me go over here. Yeah. All right. 1, 3, 4 people watching. Okay, let's continue. Let's get to the next part of the article, folks. Truck driver witnesses object before he got the hell out of there. At around 1:15 a.m., Fowler took a call from a clearly shaken and frightened man who said he was a truck driver and was calling from Waco, Texas. He claimed that a little while earlier he had been on the Oklahoma Flat Road in the northeast of Levelland with his headlights and engine suddenly cut out without warning or apparent reason. When he looked ahead of him at a distance of around 200 feet, he was shocked to see a brilliant, glowing, egg-shaped object in the middle of the road. Like the other witnesses, he claimed that the object glowed brightly like a neon sign and that it was approximately 200 feet in length. He watched the object for several moments before it curiously got the better of him, and he opened the door and stepped down down from the cabin. However, before he had even taken a step toward the object, it rose into the air straight up with a roar and streaked away. Okay, unlike the other ones, folks, this guy says that it basically made a sound, a roaring sound, and it streaked away. So, in the other ones, it sounded like this object calmly and silently rose into the air with no sound at all, which corroborates other UFO stories, folks. But this guy adds to the fact that it did make noise in this particular story. So why was this guy able to see this object? It sounds like the object basically was behaving like the other witnesses, the way they described it, but this time it rose into the air with a roar and then it sped off. It's insane. Why does that happen? I mean, clearly this is all the same object, but each time people see it, they add more details, and the reports have details that basically, are not like the other details in the other reports that were made of this object. And sometimes the object makes sounds, sometimes it glows at different colors, other times it basically just zips off or just disappears. This time, though, this guy said it just basically made a roar before streaking away. As I get back to the article once more, folks, and basically read more of this man's story. As soon as the object disappeared, the truck's lights and engines surged back to life, while the witness with the witness stating to Fowler that at this point he got the hell out of there. In between these calls, Fowler regularly kept his patrolling officers updated, informing them of each report and the details expressed in them. And by this point, there were several patrols in various parts of the region, and it wasn't long before several of the officers had their own encounters with this mysterious object. I guess we read them now, folks. A brilliant red sunset across the highway. 2 of these patrolling officers were Sheriff Clem and Deputy Pat McCulloch, who was driving along the Oklahoma Flat Road around 5 miles from Levelland at around 1:30 a.m. when they noticed an oval-shaped object that appeared like a brilliant red sunset across the highway. They estimated that the glowing object was around 1,000 feet from the vehicle when they first noticed it, and it lit up the whole pavement in front of them. The 2 men didn't manage to take their car close enough to the object before it disappeared, and as such, suffered no ill effects of their vehicle. Okay. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they were basically, it was 1,000 feet from them, and they weren't close enough for the object that basically stole their car. But remember, folks, a few stories back, remember that one man was a mile away from this object, and the object basically stole his car anyway. But these guys were clearly far closer to it, only 1,000 feet from it, and basically their car didn't their car basically didn't stall. And remember, folks, Fowler said his police officers could not get any closer than maybe 1,000 feet from this object. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense here. So that basically corroborates those stories, folks. No police officer who basically witnessed this object was no closer than 1,000 feet from it. So that makes sense. So they clearly got close, but for whatever reason, these two police officers' car, their police car didn't stall and didn't die. But why? While the other report says that this guy was a mile away from it and he saw this object, but his car stalled anyway. So we have to say, folks, was that man basically there to basically see this UFO? Was he picked specifically to see this UFO, and that's why his car died? If that's the case, why didn't these police officers? Why didn't their car just stall, and why didn't it just die right there? Were they not meant to see this? But they saw it anyway, folks, because remember, Fowler basically reported to the other police officers out on their patrols, basically look for this object, and they were looking for it, and they did see it. But for whatever reason, their car didn't stall. As I said, folks, maybe there's some rhyme and reason behind this. Maybe these witnesses were picked to see these UFOs. It would explain why these police officers, why their car didn't stall. They weren't meant to see it, and this UFO didn't just moved on. Is that what happened here? Is that the reason why these men were allowed to see it, and why some men basically their cars didn't stop, or basically just didn't die? They weren't meant to see it. That's why they weren't picked to see it. I mean, they saw it anyway, folks, because even though they saw it, their car didn't die. So maybe it was the fact that Fowler basically reported it and basically ordered his men to basically look for this object. Maybe they weren't meant to see it. God, I think I'm a bit annoying here, aren't I? Either way, what I'm trying to say here, folks, is maybe these people, because they were basically told to see it, they did see it. And these individual people who were seeing it, maybe they were picked by some higher agency to see it. I'll leave it like there, folks, because I feel like I'm reiterating the same point over and over again. So let's move on and basically get to the next part. The two other officers, patrolman Lee Hargrove and Floyd Gavin, were following behind Clem and McGulloch's car at a distance of several miles. Hargrove wrote in his report that as they were driving along Oklahoma Flat Road, they saw a strange-looking flash that seemed to come from around a mile to a mile and a half ahead of them. He further offered that this flash went from east to west and appeared to be close to the ground. Okay, so these two officers also saw this object, but to them, they only saw a flash as it was traveling away, or basically zipping off. So that's good here, folks. These other officers also saw something, but they aren't sure what they saw. All they know is they saw a flash of light. Okay, so that's another good report. It basically tells us that other people further away could also see the same object, and they were on the same road as the other two officers, only several miles away from them. Either way, another officer out that evening was Constable Lloyd Ballin. He reported seeing a similar flash-like object that was traveling so fast that it appeared only as a flash of light moving from east to west. Yet another witness out on the roads that night was Levelland Fire Marshal Ray Jones, who had taken to his vehicle to aid in the search for the strange craft. He later recalled that he was approaching the Oklahoma Flat Road. All right. As he was approaching the Oklahoma Flat Road, a streak of light zipped past ahead of him. Although his lights dimmed and his engine sputtered, the power didn't cut out. Okay. So this object was traveling too fast, but he was close enough that his engine did stall. But apparently, because this thing was moving so fast and was going somewhere so quickly, it only caused this fire marshal's car to stall, but not cut out. Okay, so this guy saw something, but was moving too fast to get any real clear idea what it was, but he saw something. But it did basically corroborate this car basically did feel like it was basically starting to sputter, and basically almost as if something was interfering with it, almost as if it were about to die. So we have another detail that corroborates the other stories, folks. Either way, now we come to the part everybody who called was very excited. Whatever the object was, these last signs reported by the officers and Fire Marshal Jones brought the events to a close and appeared to suggest that the object had moved away from the area and had done so at great speed. In total, Fowler reported that he received no less than 15 calls from people reporting what would appear to be the same vehicle, aiding that everybody who called was very excited indeed. While he at first dismissed the first call of the evening, he was now more than certain that something truly strange had taken place in and around Levelland the previous evening. Here's the newspaper report, folks. It says, fiery object reported in wide area over Texas. I could basically try to read it, folks, but how much more do I have left? Not that much more. Maybe I'll read the report after I basically finish this off. In his first write-up and evaluation of the incident, a decade and a half later, Dr. Alan Hynek offered that there were just too many coincidences surrounding the wealth of sightings that evening to dismiss them as the official explanation had done. He would state that even if mass hysteria was reasonable to suggest in this case, it wouldn't account for the stopped cars and electrical interference. Furthermore, at least two of the best of anyone's knowledge, the witnesses had their encounters independently of each other and with no knowledge of the accounts of any of the others. Hynek also suggested that the investigation by Project Blue Book was far from thorough, placing just one investigator on the case who, at least in his opinion, only spoke to some of the witnesses with no follow-up. In short, the military appeared to not be interested in truly investigating the sightings, despite the wealth of information and witnesses. Indeed, this alone should cause us to ask why this might have been. Yeah. It's well known that Project Blue Book was basically handled very badly, and while they couldn't basically dismiss all the stories, the way they did basically go around, basically, at least to the military's, at least as best as I know, folks, the military, for the most part, basically suggested most of these UFO reports were false, and they're basically misidentifications or hoaxes. But they couldn't basically get rid of all of them. And in those that they couldn't get rid of, they basically very badly investigated them, almost as if they had some priority basically to disparage and or basically bury these stories as quickly as possible. Either way, let's come to the next part. A truly intriguing case with no answers to find. There's little doubt that whatever the object might have been, the residents in and around the town of Levelland that fall night in November 1957 certainly saw something. They certainly saw something. The notion of a hoax or missed sightings is simply not likely or even realistic. Under these circumstances, nor is the suggestion that the entire episode was down to some kind of mass hallucination, which, while already unlikely, would not explain the multiple failures of car engines and headlights. Yeah, not to mention all of these incidents took place independently of each other. Yeah, these men didn't know each other, so why were they basically coming up with the same story over and over again? Yeah, that is a truly perplexing notion of the story, folks. All these stories sound so similar to each other, yet they're all independent of each other. Why? Either way, getting back to this part of the article, it is perhaps interesting to think that what might have happened if the incident had unfolded in 2017 instead of 1957. Obviously, at the time of the sighting, mobile phones were not yet to hit the market, so none of the witnesses were able to photograph the craft, and all had to wait albeit several minutes to report the sighting due to having to locate a public payphone. Had the incident taken place in our contemporary era, we might assume that several pictures would have been captured, perhaps even video footage, and the reports, if they had been made, would likely have been made as the object was in the vicinity. Ultimately, the encounter remains of immense interest to UFO researchers and enthusiasts today, 3/4 of a century later, and will most certainly prove to be a key, if small. Even if it is just a small piece of the UFO and alien puzzle that we are collectively attempting to put together. Yeah, I can say so, folks. I can say so. We had 2 watching. Not too bad. Not too bad. Hey, folks, you want me to basically read this part here, huh? Want me to read this little newspaper article? I have a few more minutes I can basically take, but we're pretty much at the end of this live stream anyway. So this article will basically just report basically a bunch of people seeing the same things over again. So it's probably not going to give us any more lights in it, but I would love to hear from you people. What do you people think about this report? Certainly this story basically is interesting for the fact, even though all these cases, all these stories, they're more or less the same over and over again. They do have key points that are different from all of them. And some of them, these people saw this orange object or this white and yellow object, or even this blue and green object as it flashed different colors. That made me think that maybe all these objects that were being seen were different UFOs. No. And with some of these reports, folks, the man who saw this object said he saw orange-green. He saw this orange-green object fly through the air and then land in the middle of the road, and then it turned blue and green like in the other report. He also mentions that this thing also made a whooshing sound as it took off, while in the other stories, all these people said that this object made no sound whatsoever. In some of the stories, in one story at least, in one story at least, this man said he saw the object rise in the air and literally disappear in front of his eyes. Like it just teleported. So in all of these stories, folks, while they all have key differences, they also have a lot of corroborating bits of it that basically make me think that this object was the same object that was seen over and over again. That was a single UFO seen that night back in 1957. So that is a very interesting bit of information. What was this oblong cigar-shaped object? What did these people actually see? Why was it here? Which is one of the real questions we have to ask. Why was it there? What did it get out of this? What was the reason for it? I mean, I see no reason. I'm not even sure exactly why it would be there, except to basically just show itself off. They wanted to be seen. And that's about it, folks. Either way, folks, we're at the end of this live stream, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics They're Bad For You. The there is misspelled. It's T-H-E-R-E. It's there, not there, as it's supposed to be spelled. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. If you want to, folks, use the link on the pinned tweet on my Twitter page at ChrisWI24685259. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Please share this video out. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to hit the part of the bell that will give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. Now, folks, go over and subscribe to Dark Saints on YouTube. Go over and subscribe to Dark Saints on YouTube and on BitChute. Then go subscribe to Robot Co-op on YouTube and on Twitch. I also want you to go over and subscribe to Stitched Together Pics on YouTube. Remember, folks, down in the descriptions or in the chat, I left links to YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, or BitChute, Dark Saints, Robot Co-op, and Stitched Together Pics. Use those links to go subscribe to me, but also, use those links to go subscribe to me, folks. And remember, I will upload 2 exclusive videos today, like I do every day, to Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, or BitChute. So use those links and go subscribe to me to those sites, okay? Because remember, I'm going to upload those 2 exclusive videos like I do every day, but I already have hundreds of exclusive videos already up on Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, or BitChute, just waiting for you to basically watch. So go subscribe to me up on those channels and go and basically watch my 2 new videos today, because they're going to be good. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video. I intend to make my next one even better than this one, folks. I'll try every day. I try to do better and better. So please come back again and watch my content and watch my next live stream. So until then, folks, I'll see you all again soon. So until then, bye. Bye, folks.